Welcome to In the Money. I'm your host, Daniel Dent. Over the last 20 years, I've worked with families and businesses, helping them become financially savvy. And now I'm going to do the same for you. Each show, I'm going to share personal financial topics to help you make better informed financial decisions. You probably interact with a number of financial companies in your day-to-day life without even thinking about it. The financial institution you interact with the most is probably your bank. As consumers, we tend to think about the type of account we need or the size of the bank itself more than the person we would be interacting with if we need help. But having a banker, like any other financial professional, can help make your life easier. Joining us today is Bo Allen, president of the West Tennessee market at First Tennessee Bank. Choosing a banker is probably not something you've spent much time thinking about. We're going to tell you why it's important. Stay tuned.
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
We're discussing banking today. Joining us is Bo Allen, president of the West Tennessee market at First Tennessee Bank. Bo, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Glad to be here.
Before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at First Tennessee.
Sure. I am the market president for what we call the West region, which is essentially the Mid-South market, North Mississippi, Memphis, and parts of West Tennessee. So I manage our retail branch operations, our private client and trust departments, our commercial banking, and our small business banking for the Memphis market.
And also very active in the community, so thank you for that as well.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of competition out there for you. How do we go about choosing a bank? How does a consumer choose a bank out of all these choices that we have?
Great question. I think there's a lot of things that banks can provide, a lot of services, whether it's deposits or credit or investment type products. So I think it kind of starts with what the consumer's looking for, and for me it's really building a relationship with somebody that you can get advice from. And so if you have somebody that you trust, that you can really count on to not sell you products but to sell you advice, that's a good starting point.
Mm-hmm. And you see a lot of people moving banks back and forth. What causes people to change banks?
You know, I think it's a combination of things. I think convenience is still a factor. You know, while technology's improved and there's not as great a need to go into branches, people still like to have that branch close by. I think, you know, banks have experienced some turnover from time to time. You lose your relationship manager, maybe you start looking around. Certainly products play into that, as well as rates. People sometimes, you know, want the very best rate they can get.
You know, you mentioned trust. There's a lot of larger companies out there, larger banks. One in particular, Wells Fargo. We've heard a lot about this in the media. I actually had an acquaintance of mine ask me about some of their dealings, and again, seeing it on the news where they were opening accounts for customers without their knowledge. What's your takeaway from that, and is that a common thing that happens? No,
it's really not, and it was disappointing to see. I think they created a culture at Wells Fargo where there was a lot of pressure on the bankers to sell a lot of products, and you know, I don't think that's common in banks today. I think you know, ultimately banks want to help their clients, and whether that's with an account or a loan or some type of investment vehicle, they're there to help their clients with that. And so I don't think that's a common practice, and I think Wells Fargo has made a lot of changes to improve that so that that's not still going on today.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. I think that the process itself, or the culture that you mentioned, in most places is probably a good thing, and you want someone that asks you questions.
That's right.
Tries to get to know you and know your situation. So hopefully they can provide you that good advice. Going back to that choosing a bank piece, you know, when you're younger, you generally start out with your parents' bank. Mm-hmm. You see that still today, or do people change as they get older, or do they stick with
Well,
that
some of them
legacy?
do. I mean, especially if their parents have a good relationship with the bank, you know, they might be able to piggy bank off on some of the products and services that their parents have, or the relationship their parents have may give the kids a little bit better rates or fee structure in their accounts. So you do see that some, but also see a lot of people that want to blaze their own trail and forge their own relationships with their bank. So it's a combination.
And again, with the number of competitors out there, there's these large banks like the Chases, the Bank of Americas, and so forth. Then you have the mid-sized banks like First Tennessee, for example. Then you have all these community banks out there. What are the differences between those?
You know, I think the biggest thing is the really large banks have really large capacity, so they can do really large transactions. They also have a lot of dollars to invest in technology as well as multiple products. So if you need a really large transaction, or if you need a very specialized product, there's probably a little bit better chance that you may get that from a large institution. You may travel a lot, and so there you have the convenience of having ATMs all over the country. You know, if you're a large company, you may need a large line of credit, and so you need a bigger bank that can help with that. On the other hand, the smaller banks have a reputation maybe of having a little bit higher level of service. You may have the opportunity to actually be dealing with the local market president or the local credit person who's actually making that loan decision, and so smaller banks certainly provide that higher level of service than some of the larger banks do.
So where does that mid-sized bank fit in? Is it a combination of both, more or less, or is it?
Well, for us at First Tennessee, that is the hope, is that we're big enough to provide a lot of different products and a lot of different solutions, but we're small enough that we can be there for our client and really get to know them and build that relationship, and that's been our goal for a long time.
Yeah, I think that's what you hear the most out of customers these days. It's not the way it used to be, or I don't have that touch experience that I used to have, or one-on-one experience in the past. You had mentioned specialization, different specializations that banks have, or whether it's the bank itself or within another area in the bank. What are some examples of those?
Well, for example, some banks are really good at the mortgage business, and maybe they've really focused on mortgage lending, and so they have a great niche there that they can play. Some banks are really good on the automobile lending, and they've really focused their efforts on that. At First Tennessee, we've got a number of specialty businesses, more on the commercial side, where we've got a group that works with mortgage companies all over the United States, and we've got another group that works with community banks throughout the Southeast. We call it our correspondent banking area. We just acquired a group that works with restaurant franchises and people that own lots of different franchises of restaurants to handle their banking needs. So the advantage to working with a specialty group is you're working with people that really understand your business, and so the goal is they can structure the loans and then deposit services designed specifically for you.
Okay, hold that thought.
Okay.
We have to take a short break. We'll be right back with Bo Allen.
How can I help my daughter with her reading?
Searching for help with dachshund breeding.
No.
Let me try. Sarah's bright, but when she's reading, she has trouble sounding out words.
Playing world music.
What?
I give up.
Wait, I was trying to show you how Sarah feels every day. Frustrating, isn't it? Redirecting to understood.org.
Join parents and experts at understood.org, a free online resource about learning and attention issues to help your child thrive.
So, Same time next week?
Well, of course.
Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome back to In the Money. If you're just joining us, we're talking about banking. Today we're joined by Bo Allen, president of the West Tennessee market at First Tennessee Bank. Bo, thanks again for coming on. Before we left for the commercial break, you were talking about some of the specialties that the different banks offer, but yours in particular.
Sure.
One thing that was interesting, I thought, that you had told me before the show was about the new inroads into the music industry that you guys are doing. Can you talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, and it kind of goes into how different banks have different specialty groups. We recently hired a group of bankers in Nashville who focus on the music industry, and so that could mean working with musicians and helping them with their personal banking and investments. Or it could mean lending against some of those music rights or the catalog of songs that artist owns, and taking that as collateral and trying to leverage that into acquiring other artists. And so it's definitely a specialized form of lending, and Nashville obviously is a great place to do that because there's a lot of music up there. Not only country music, but all kinds of music.
So I imagine that takes quite a bit of expertise too. That's a different industry to be involved in.
No doubt about it.
So we've talked about the big banks, we've talked about the small banks and the banks in between. Let's talk about online banks for a minute. That's another competitor that you have out there.
Absolutely.
It's another choice for all the consumers out there.
Right.
Do they want to go bank with an online bank? Do you see your customers banking with online banks by themselves or in conjunction with you, or at all?
Yeah, well, if you look at industry statistics, it's certainly real. There are a lot of people across the country that do business with online banks, and the theory behind it is it's a lot more cost effective for that bank. They don't have the brick and mortar branches, and they don't have the number of bankers salaries to pay, so it's easier for them in theory to potentially have better rates or to have other products that they can offer. The downside is you don't really have a relationship with a banker, and so because we're more of a relationship bank here, that's what most of our customers seem to like. They want to talk to a person that they know and they understands their business or understands their family needs, and so we don't see a lot of people going to that, but there are people doing it.
Probably more on the younger side.
Absolutely.
I would imagine.
Absolutely.
And I think you hit the nail on the head. The biggest con that I see in my mind is that you don't have that relationship or that person you can go to if you have a problem. I guess the pro side of it, you generally see higher rates from them on CDs and maybe some better rates on loans because they can pass along those savings that you had mentioned. Also, there's different types of services that people don't normally think about or associate with banking. There's investments, trust, different wealth management, insurance, financial planning. Can you comment on some of that? And is that pretty common in the banking industry?
It's gotten to be over the years. Number one, our clients, want solutions. They want a multitude of things that can help them, whether it's, retirement planning or financial planning or money management, asset protection. And so what our bank has done and many other banks is they've gone out and they've hired people from the investment industry to come be part of our team. And, we work with a lot of our clients on many different investment needs, and so it's certainly a way to help our clients. Certainly a profit center for the bank as well. If at the same time those investment companies out there are calling on our bank customers to do lending and deposit needs today. So certainly going both ways.
Well, you've answered my next question. I think you're cheating here and looking off my sheet, but my next question was going to be, can a bank or any financial institution, because you see State Farm, other companies out there that traditionally have done or had focuses in different areas offering banking services or vice versa, insurance services, things like that. But can one of those financial institutions truly be a one-stop shop without sacrificing expertise in that new area that they're in?
Yeah, I think in this day and age of technology, you can. I think it's important to have the right people in place. If you've got the right people that understand the business and that can provide that level of service and advice, there's no question.
Mm-hmm. So we've talked about all the great things that banks offer. Let's talk about some other things we see in the media. We seem to see more banks failing, or whether it's true or not, or whether it's just in the media more often. How, as a consumer or the people watching out there, how do they know the health of the bank that they're dealing with or that they're looking at moving to?
Sure. Well, there's certainly, information readily available on all banks. With the governance that we have in place with our federal government regulating the banking industry and all the scrutiny that began back when we had the downturn in the economy in 2007 and 2008, I think banks are held to a little bit different standard maybe than they were. Obviously the FDIC does come in and insure deposits up to a certain level, and so there's that protection for consumers as well. But if you're thinking about opening an account with a bank, you can get information on what kind of liquidity that bank has, what kind of capital they have, and how that compares to other banks that you might be considering.
So let me ask you this.
Okay.
You've got kids. You've
Absolutely.
got one that's, I think, a teenager,
16.
probably right about the age where they're going to open a checking account.
Absolutely.
I know where you're going to say they're going to open the account, but if you didn't work where you worked,
Right.
How would you advise your son or daughters to look for an account or look for a bank?
Yeah, well, I would start with convenience, because for me, I like to be able to go in and talk to somebody, and so if there's a place close to where I work or close to my home where I can go in and sit down and ask questions and really understand more about that bank and the products that I'm interested in utilizing, that would be important to me. So convenience would be important. So my son actually did open a checking account last week, and he chose the bank that I work for. But again, it was more out of convenience, and I think he's happy.
Was it really out of convenience, or did you say you'd bop him on the head?
It was out of convenience for me and him, but I probably would have bopped him on the head too.
We have to take another short break. We'll be right back with Bo Allen.
Really? Buzz, what's up, man? You left some leaves burning out here.
Yeah, I just came in just for a second.
Come on, man. If it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave. You could torch the whole neighborhood.
It's a good point there, Smokey.
9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
They say that when you're facing extreme danger, your life flashes before you. If you think that's sad, consider facing it before you even have enough life to flash before your eyes. Deaths and injuries can be prevented by using the right car seat. Visit safercar.gov/the-right-seat to know what is appropriate for each age and size.
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome back to In the Money. We're discussing banking today. Bo, I wanted to talk about, we've talked about the different types of banks, how you go about choosing a bank. I want to talk about bankers themselves, and I'll give you an example. I was in the Apple store a few weeks ago. The person that was helping me said, you know what, I've never been into a branch other than to open my account. They do everything on their smartphone now. So my question is, are traditional bankers even relevant anymore?
Well, it certainly depends on what your needs are. If somebody just needs to open up an account like your friend at the Apple store, certainly you can do that online. But if your friend needed a large credit need or wanted to learn more about financial planning, or wanted to earn more interest on a savings account, there may be a need to actually sit down and discuss that with somebody face to face. So I would say yes and no to your question.
I don't know if I'd call that person my friend. They charged me about $600, but I get what you're saying. Let's talk about what does having that banking relationship, what does that bring to the table?
Sure. Well, I think that I'm gonna use an example on the credit side. So if you wanted to purchase a lot to build a home, if you wanted to buy a second home, if you wanted to look at buying a business, you're going to need to have somebody help tailor that loan to fit your needs. It's hard to do that online. And so you're going to want to have a relationship with somebody that can listen and can understand what you're trying to accomplish, and can go out there and put that together for you in a cost efficient way.
Yeah, it's that one size fits all strategy that you seem to see online a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That may be a way for them to offer better rates or lower fees, but you may pay for it in the end because, like you said, it's not tailored to your specific needs. Right. I think older generations probably appreciate bankers more because they're used to that environment and that interaction. Why should a younger person have a banker?
Well, I think it for certain young people that may not have a lot of great needs, they might not need one. It's convenience, it's cost, it's what's working for them. But when you get out and you start having more products that you need, or having more things that you have questions about, that's when a banker is going to come into play. And so, I would say, business owners, people with complex assets, they're going to have a greater need for a banker maybe than somebody that's just got one account.
I think that's similar to any other financial profession.
That's
you may
exactly
not need
right.
an accountant until
Right.
a little bit later on down the road, things become more complex. So I had this question asked me too about developing a relationship with a banker. How do you do that? That person said, is there a bar that all the bankers go to that I can go stop by at the end of the day and meet somebody? So how do you develop that relationship?
Well, I think if you're an individual or a business owner, and you're looking to interview bankers, I think you can you sit down with them and tell them what you're looking for, and you can ask them some questions about what they about their background, tell me a little bit about some of your clients today to get a feel for what their expertise is. What kind of account load do they have? Do they have so many clients that they don't have time to really sit down with you and spend quality time with you as you need as the consumer? How long have they been in the banking industry? And so, those are some questions that I think you could ask a banker to try to get a feel for who you want to work with.
So I think that's a really good point. You approach it almost as an interview process.
Absolutely.
Like you would with anything else.
Absolutely.
I think there's a lot to gain from that, not just because you meet with the first person and start doing business with them, find a good fit.
You could certainly ask for some references too.
Mm-hmm. So there's different types of banking relationships. You have the retail branches that are out there. You have private client banking, small business banking, and some of the other things that you mentioned. But let's talk about private client banking for a minute. What does that mean exactly, and who does that best fit? Sure.
Well, private client was created to try to give a little bit higher level of service. We define private client as banking for families and individuals who are either high income, high net worth, or professional type folks. So, it might be a veterinarian, it might be a dentist, it might be a doctor, a lawyer. That would be, CPA, professional type people. It could be a business owner, but someone that has a high net worth, has a lot of assets, and they have a little bit higher need for a little bit more touch. And that's where private banking really comes into play.
I think you kind of answered my next question, actually, is why can't everybody have a private client banker? And I think you mentioned the needs that are there, maybe more complexity with their financial situation.
Well, we can certainly assign a banker to everybody, depending on how much their needs are. And we have lots of different bankers out there. Some of them are in our retail branches, and they can certainly serve as a private banker to people depending on what their needs are. So we would welcome that opportunity.
I want to talk about small business banking also, because there's a lot of small business owners out there.
Absolutely.
What is the importance of having a small business banker?
Sure. Well, small businesses have lots of needs that a bank can provide. You know, the first need is getting your customers to pay you and to put that money in your account where it can be protected and you can safely, you know, pay your bills and pay your employees and do those things. So the deposit piece is critical. And that cost and efficiency of that is very important. You know, the other need a lot of small business owners have is capital. They need credit needs. And so having a banker that understands your small business is going to help you get those credit needs more readily accessible and have them structured better so that you can run your business.
Yeah, I think especially when it comes to small business owners, like you said, there's often credit needs, but there's a complexity with tax returns and so forth. So again, going back to that advice and not having a one-size-fits-all, but having somebody that can tailor whatever your credit needs are, I think is a big bonus for having a personal
Sure. You know what, I mean, to me, another thing a really good business banker can do is they can see some examples of other customers that they've worked with that have been able to save money by doing things or managing their business more efficiently, and they can recommend that to the business owner. And so that's something that can work well.
That's great. Bo, thanks again for coming out. We appreciate you spending some time with us. Having a banker is like having an accountant or investment advisor. Developing a relationship and having access to advice and services can make your financial life much easier. Also, having a trusted person to call if anything goes wrong will help provide a great peace of mind. That's all the time we have today. Thanks to Bo Allen, and thank you for watching. If you'd like to see more shows, follow us on YouTube or Facebook at Germantown Municipal Television. You can also visit our website at www.gmtvonline.org. And remember, each person's financial situation is unique. Before making any decision, speak to a financial professional to see if our discussions today are in your best interest. We'll see you next month. I'm Daniel Dent, and now you are in the money.